You're listening to the Heroes Powerhour presented by BlizzPro.com. Your hosts, Balrog fan Zexorus and DJ Tyrant. What is up, everyone? This is episode 56 of the Heroes Power Hour. We have so much to talk about. I really want to try to just get into it very, very quickly here. As always, Balrog fan BP and Zexorus are with me. Balrog, how was your week in Heroes of the Storm?
Oh, it was amazing. I finally got into playing again. It took me a little bit to settle into the changes and kind of like watch things and see what was going on. And we had practice matches for the Chair League on Sunday. And we practiced more for Chair League on Monday and then played Chair League. And I played some games today, and it's just been a lot of fun. I'm really all about the new meta, honestly.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it's kind of forming now. And Zacharias, what do you think? How's Heroes been for you?
It's been pretty fun. Like Charlie said, we practiced for Chair League. It was a lot of fun. We ended up having a pretty competitive match actually yesterday, which I was kind of feeling down about midway through the match, but we clutched it out and took a nice hard lead at the end and just kind of rolled on that to victory. Yeah, and I'm also really, really enjoying the meta right now. Like, it's really, I want to say tank friendly.
For people who haven't seen the Chair League or know what the Chair League is, it's basically like an amateur. It's a step below Heroes hype. Basically, it's 4 teams who want to play in a competitive setting in an amateur league style format, and it's so much fun. We kind of decided on sort of like because they tell you the map before, and we knew it was Cursed Hollow, and we wanted to be able to set traps basically and be able to control space. So we wanted to base our team around Gazlowe because we had Artemis fill in for Jimmy, who was on a plane on his way back from Heroes of the Dorm because he's so Hollywood. So we had to improvise, and Artemis stepped up in a big way with her Gazlowe, and we did a lot of work based around her Gazlowe, basically working a lot of traps off the Gravel Bomb and off of Vala's Reign of Vengeance and off of Johanna's pull-ins. And I feel like we played that pretty much to perfection past 10. Early game we struggled, but overall, it was a really competitive match, which we started to just take control of the map and the team fights around level 13 and never really look back. We had a couple good engages around tributes, and we ended up taking that win, and it was really, really fun.
Nice. Yeah, this is the first week we've done the show since getting partnered, so all I'm seeing is my face in chat. It's really funny. I love it.
Everybody, we have a subscribe button right below where I'm pointing. Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this on the podcast format, go ahead and jump into the channel at some point and subscribe, because not only will you be supporting us, you'll be supporting all the wonderful Blizz Pro shows like West March Workshop, Well Met, Payload Podcast, the Blizz Pro Weekly show, all of it. So, $5 a month, and you get free emotes, and you promote the Blizz Pro brand, and it goes a long way for all of us. So go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, and you get that sweet Stay Tight Jimmy emote, which is just the best thing ever.
That you do. Did we want to move into our first topic of the night?
I want to know how was Heroes of the Dorm was for you, because your weekend gaming was basically Heroes of the Dorm.
Yeah, it was basically me going to Seattle, hanging out in Seattle with a bunch of Heroes people, and watching Heroes of the Dorm live. So that was really fun, just seeing it in person. And I just saw that. I think it should be coming back. Oh, wait. Is it still having issues?
Why don't you start over from the beginning?
Okay.
Yes, Jimmy. Let's talk about Heroes of the Dorm.
Yeah, Heroes of the Dorm. If you're not familiar for some reason, it's a collegiate esports event put on by TESPA and Blizzard with a partnership with ESPN. And they had the finals on Saturday and Sunday, and it was ASU, UT Arlington, Tennessee, and UConn that fought for the scholarship. And you're going to be spoiled anyway. So if you don't want to know who won, stop listening to this podcast. But ASU really crushed through the entire tournament and just dominated the whole thing. It was a little bit of a bummer after last year's where Berkeley squeaked by ASU 3-2. But yeah, what was really impressive to me was the amount of people that were there. They filled the whole stadium, and it was loud. It was so loud that I was actually annoyed being in the general seating because I couldn't hear the casters at all. So that's why I went up to the press area to listen to the game so I could hear the casters and what they were saying, just because as a amateur caster, I kind of wanted to hear what they were saying about the game, and because they had it tailored obviously to a much more beginner friendly format, so they weren't really talking about talent builds necessarily as much, but it was interesting to see. Speaking of talent builds, what do you think of it was UT Arlington? They did the Abathur Zagara shenanigans with the...
Oh, wow.
You're going, wow, Jimmy.
Why don't you start over from what did we think about the talent build?
Okay. What did you guys think of the Zagara Abathur build with the Nidus Worm stuff?
Oh, God, it was pub nightmares all over again. Like, that's not the first time I've seen it. But it's the first time I've seen it in a competitive setting, and now, like, that just made me angry to watch.
Yeah, I don't have cable. I didn't actually get to watch. I was very sad. We had to practice that night, and I didn't get a chance to like watch it in any way, and I didn't go back and watch it yet. So that's something I'm going to do this week. To speak to your point about like it being for amateurs, though, I have a friend who doesn't play Heroes. He doesn't really play any online MOBA games in any sense, but he caught Heroes of the Dorm last year, and it was hype enough for him to want to watch this year. And he said he enjoyed it almost as much, but it was like the years when Kentucky and Duke is going to be the darling favorites of the March Madness tournaments. It was clear ASU had returned all their seniors and was just ready to roll on everyone. So he said while it was fun to watch still, and he was really into, and he wasn't sure if it was Artosis or Trixler, but he said one of those guys has such a cadence when they're announcing. Like they manage to create hype with the way they're talking, but speak so clearly about all the crazy action that's going on as a he doesn't watch any, MOBA games at all. Like, he doesn't really watch esports at all. And he's just like, watching that guy talk about the game was just amazing.
Yeah,
that had to have been
Artosis.
That's what I told him. I was like, I think you're talking about Artosis, but I can't be 100%. But yeah, he's like, he starts off like talking so slowly and clearly, and then just creates hype by speeding up his voice, and he really appreciates it. He's like, those are things like NFL casters don't do properly, you know, like they're doing bits where that guy, when he was watching Artosis, felt like he was watching somebody who genuinely enjoys and understands the gameplay, and he was really appreciative of that. So as far as like the people catering to the people who don't know what's going on and just trying to present something for people to watch, Artosis probably killed it.
Yeah, and one thing kind of behind the scenes, Artosis and Tasteless were actually telling me this was the most rehearsal they've ever done for an event, because usually when they cast something like a GSL, they don't do any rehearsal for that. They just are off the cuff and stuff like that. But with this being on ESPN, I mean, they were there like Tuesday before the event already rehearsing all their lines and stuff. So there was a lot of stuff written already. So it was very interesting to see. I definitely want to go back and watch the broadcast and see how it looked on TV. But the weirdest thing, though, really was going to the event for 3 hours and it being over. I'm used to esports events kind of just going all day. But since this is a broadcast thing, obviously you have a confined schedule. So
plus it was just one. It was one match on Sunday. You know.
Yeah, it was one match on Sunday,
and it was steamroll.
Yeah, it was absolute steamroll. It felt very let's see here, TI 4ish, the International 4, where LGD just steamrolled VG in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I was disappointed in that. I don't mind
for
non-Dota
players. It's like when Duke wins.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was a really fun event. I enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it to anyone who's into watching Heroes of the Storm. Being there is definitely a unique experience, and there was all sorts of giveaways and stuff. So got all sorts of goodies like skins, like this Asmodunk bundle that we'll be giving away tonight later in the show. So hang out, and we'll let you know as soon as that's going to be given away.
Hang out and stay tight.
Hang out and stay tight. But yeah, I think the bigger news was I was at the airport yesterday with a bunch of the Heroes people, and patch notes dropped, and so we kind of got to talk about it a little bit, and it was interesting. And now I would like to know your guys' thoughts on it. Did we just want to run down straight through these patch notes and talk about them as we go along?
Yeah, there's a lot to like kind of talk about where they just kind of harken back to like the initial comment, but yeah, there was a lot of changes, and playing today, I already felt them. I feel like the Kelthus changes. He's good now. Like I'll just jump right into Kelthus. They increased his health by almost. They increased his health almost by like 75. 40? Yeah, they increased his health by
55.
55 and or no, that's not right. They increased his health by 30. They increased. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Don't argue math with me.
Goddamn, I am bad at this. Yeah, they increased his health by 55. They increased his health regen. They increased the range on his flame strike by 10%. They increased the damage on his flame strike. Basically, this was all to compensate for the fact that it will no longer be empowered by verdant spears. Living bomb, the damage over time got increased. The explosion damage got increased. With gravity lapse, the cooldown got decreased by a second. The mana cost got decreased by 5 seconds. And some of the talents related to gravity lapse to make them more appealing got changed, like Netherwind. Actually, that one, the mana restored after hitting an enemy hero is down from 85 to 80, but the bonus damage taken when you take Gravity Crush is increased from 25 to 30%. Overall, I played against a Kelthus today, and I felt like he was a lot more dangerous than he'd been in the recent iterations of Kelthus since the initial nerfs that took place probably, 3 weeks ago now?
Yeah, the big patch, yeah.
Yeah. So he feels a lot more dangerous to me. Like, that was my big initial reaction. I feel like he probably got the biggest changes that mean the most. Because I'm an avid Tychus player, and I played some of these Tychus changes they did recently, and I think he's still sort of in the same wheelhouse where he can put out good damage, but he's really there to soften the tanks nowadays, which is fine. You need an assassin who's good at that, especially as a counter pick who, is there to fight like a triple melee team or a double tank team. He's going to still be good at that, but the changes they made to Tychus are sort of they're just sort of quality of life changes that didn't make him any more effective at what he was doing than he already was. He's a little more he's a lot better at surviving now, but he's still not the best assassin. Kelthus, I feel like, has the chance to be the top mage at this point. Him and Li Ming are always going to be kind of in a trade-off position with the way their skill sets are. But if I had a choice between putting Kelthus or Li Ming on my team, right now I'd take Kelthus.
Bold words from Charlie there. What do you think, Zach? Do you think Kelthus has received enough love to be picked over Li Ming at this point?
Yeah, honestly. I mean, he just he feels like he puts out almost better numbers than old Kale.
Yeah.
With the chain bomb spreading becoming part of his baseline, like it's pretty ridiculous. He's dangerous at all levels now. But I don't know that much about assassins because I am a tank player. I just know he makes me go ouch, and I run at him to hopefully make him stop making me say ouch.
He felt a lot more dangerous when I played against him earlier because in all of his skills, he was able to create situations that led to a lot of damage, where before, he was always setting up for just chain bomb damage or pyro. Well, in the recent weeks, pyroblast damage. Definitely Phoenix has fallen by the wayside a little bit. Pyroblast is so good now, and it really feels like he has a lot more opportunities to soften you up for that pyroblast. You have to play very careful around Kelthus, and it's much like we've gotten used to playing against Li Ming, where you kind of just bide your time until you can get rid of her. And Kelthus is in that same boat now, where he wasn't quite as dangerous as her before. I feel like he's just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than her now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, along that line, she also got some changes as well. Dominant talent, health restoration decreased from 25 to 20% of maximum health. Arcane Orb getting quite a bit of reworking here. Damage reduced by 10% overall from 150 to 135 initial damage, and 450 to 405 damage at max range. The cooldown did decrease from 10 to 8 seconds though, and mana cost reduced as well from 50 to 40. Cooldown reduction decreased from 6 to 5 seconds on that triumvirate talent. Triumvirate. And then Zay's Vengeance no longer caused Triumvirate to deal reduced damage to enemies that are close to Li Ming. Teleport damage of Calamity reduced by 10%. Illusionist talent get changed to minimum amount of damage taken in order to refresh. Teleport's cooldown increased from 15 to 20% of your maximum health. And Disintegrate gets a change. Cooldown increased from 20 to 30 seconds. Does that really matter, though, if she gets a reset?
I think it matters in the sense that now the Disintegrates have to be more meaningful. You can't just throw out Disintegrate expecting to get a reset. Mm-hmm. Especially with the changes to Arcane Orb. Like, a lot of the times, Arcane Orb would soften them up so much that Disintegrate was guaranteed. I think Li Ming players are going to be struggling for the next week to find the correct talent build for her. Because things have kind of changed so much now with the Arcane Orb and with the Teleport that it's not so like ABC, this is easy. It's going to be interesting to see where Li Ming players end up landing on the correct talent build, or at least the correct talent build for certain maps. She's definitely not as brain dead as she used to be. You have to be good with Li Ming at this point. She's still a very dangerous hero, but you can't just derp into her.
Yeah, you can. You can just go arrow build. To be perfect, they've not touched anything on her arrows, and her arrow build is still fine.
It's still good, but
it's not brain dead like like Calamity build or anything, or Orb build or anything like that. But like arrow build is still really. It's not that hard to hit the arrows. You get like 3 of them, and one of the talents you get bonus damage if you hit just one of them.
Look, her missiles are really good, but a good player can honestly play the long game and juke her out of those buffs that she gets from hitting them. So there's a risk reward there, which it's completely fair, because if you get hit by him or she jukes you into getting hit by them, you deserve to take all the bad things that happen by getting hit by them. I've never had a problem with the arrows. It's always been the orb and the teleport that have been really overtuned, and that's what they focused on with this patch, which I really agree with. I think there were problems with the fact that she could use teleport as both a strong engage and disengage. That's way too much when they were trying to take away Bolt of the Storm from everyone else, and then she got one that was even better in her base kit. And the Arcane Orb, think about back to the S of Johan days and
oh my God.
how strong Arcane Orb was just outright. Like, you had to play away from her constantly, and if you played away from her in the wrong direction, she punished you with the missiles, or she would teleport in and force you to a position if you didn't have the protection of a wall where you had to make a 50-50 guess, and a lot of the times it was hard to make that guess because she covered so much space. Now it feels like she's just a really strong, far-away hero. And that's fine. That's where you want your bursty assassin mages. You want them to be able to protect themselves and do damage, but she doesn't punish you so much for guessing wrong now, and I think that's really important for her balance.
Speaking of balance, we've always been talking about this. I feel like it's been brought up quite a bit, especially in the pro scene. Mighty Gus is finally getting nerfed a little bit.
Jeez, thank God.
It's
about time.
The cooldown is increasing from 40 to 60 seconds. I almost feel like it still needs to be more, but Blizzard definitely likes to move the slider a little bit at a time and see how much of an effect it has. And I can see if it doesn't do what they're kind of wanting to do with this, it'll come back they'll come back to this, increase the cooldown just a little bit more, because it seemed like every time you played against a Falstad, Mighty Gus was up 100% of the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. 40 seconds is a very short cooldown for something that provides that strong of a disengage.
Yeah, it's probably one of the top 3 ultimates in the game, like as far as determining team fights.
Yeah. Yeah, it was ruining people's positioning is always going to be strong in games like this, because especially when you talk about like the pro level and things like that, it means you are giving your team control on where your enemy stands, which is always a big deal. And whether that means your team gets to escape or you set them up for a devastating combo, a 40-second cooldown is way too low. I mean, that's why ETC's Mosh Pit got constantly pushed up on its cooldown to where it's at 2 minutes now. Because it forced enemy positioning into you can't move. But Falstad's was always worse because he could fly behind teams and push them into a positioning that was completely at a disadvantage for the enemy. So I still think 60 seconds might be too low. I would prefer 75, but I mean that's just me. And like you said, they move the scales a little bit slow, which is always good.
Yeah, and then Illidan also got changes as well. Betrayer's Thirst got nerfed a little bit, and Dive got nerfed, the range from 33% to 20%, and the reflexive block talent, block charges granted after casting Dive, reduced from 3 to 2. But in turn, they are buffing the Sweeping Strike. Battered Assault talent is getting a damage bonus from instead of 100% to 125%, and Unbound talent for Sweeping Strike. The cooldown reduction is now also granted when Sweeping Strike hits non-heroic enemies, and the cooldown reduction is from 5 to 4 seconds. So we might see a little bit more play putting into the talenting of Sweeping Strike, but I still feel like Friend or Foe will definitely be taken because of just how good that is to play so aggressive as Illidan.
Yeah. I think they hit the sweet spot here with Illidan. I think reflexive block was probably the biggest problem with this kit, making him overpowered, and they managed to move that around and still buff Sweeping Strike. So I think Illidan's going to be in a perfect spot right now where he'll always be between 48 and 52%, which is where they want their heroes. And I don't think we'll see many Illidan changes for a while. I just feel like he's really good. He fits in certain team comps. He can be countered. He's everything they want in a melee hero.
Mm-hmm. No,
Willie, I know you play a lot of melee heroes, and you kind of like understand what it is to be a bruiser, especially on the tank side of things. Like, what do you think of these Illidan changes?
It's pretty much. I'm pretty much agreeing with you on this. He's in a really good spot. I mean, he can still be countered. Johanna still just ruins his day as long as she can get the blind off. She provides way too much control for him to handle. The only thing I don't like is I think that, and I've got to reconfirm it. But even if he's blinded, as long as he's auto attacking, he still gets the cooldown reduction. He doesn't get any of the healing. I don't like that. I think the auto attacks need to hit because that still allows him to pop his other skills. For essentially for free. But that's a personal beef. I'm not sure off the top of my head if that's still working. I don't think it should work like that if it does. But yeah, he brings a lot to the table for a melee assassin, and I don't think he's going to be first pick material because you have like Kale, Li Ming, Zul, those types of characters. But he's definitely, mid-round pick.
He's the kind of character you build a team around, which is nothing you tip early. Like you take your melee, you take your healer, you take your main assassin first, and then Illidan kind of comes in surprises, and then your next two picks are the people who back him up. And I think these fixes kind of set him in that wheelhouse where it's not so devastating if you don't see it coming, but if you're really good with Illidan, you're rewarded for that type of skill, it's what you want in every hero. You want every hero to be able to be countered, and you also want every hero to be able to surprise an enemy who doesn't prepare for them. Not in a way that's broken, but in a way that makes the enemy team pay for not accounting for that type of skill set. And I think basically, I honestly feel like Reflexive Block was too tuned up. Charges granting after dive from being 3 was a lot. I think 2 will put him in that sweet spot where he feels fair.
Well, isn't that the standard for like block charges?
Yes.
Yeah,
they basically gave him the standard for block charges, but then they realized, oh god, he can dive a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah. They needed to fix that. Jimmy, I mean, you're probably more familiar with Illidan than either of us. What do you think?
I think they're good changes. I think he was a little bit too scary, and I feel like these aren't too crazy of changes, and they're not too overly trying to nerf him. So I'm okay with these changes. I'm interested in playing him more still, even though with these nerfs to him a bit. I think he's in a good place. I don't think he's too overpowered. I mean, it may have seemed like that watching Heroes of the Dorm a little bit, but it was partially the draft that really kind of makes him so good.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because Illidan went in such a low spot for such a long time after Heroes of the Dorm last year, and they buffed him literally, 3 weeks before Heroes of the Dorm.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's back in the limelight. It's like, oh, man, they just love Illidan, huh?
Yeah, I think he was in, if not 100% of the games, 90% of the games, I feel like, either banned or picked up.
Yeah.
It's another thing, you don't tip your hand. You don't tip what you know about the meta until it's championship time. Sure, there might have been people in pubs and stuff like that, messing around with them and figuring stuff out. But if you're a competitive team, you don't show your hand.
Mm-hmm.
You don't bust out the big picks until your back's against the wall.
Okay, I say we do the lightning round for these next few changes, and we'll all sum it up by this Thrall change. Okay, the Thrall's changes is Sundering stun duration reduced from 1.5 to 1.25 seconds. And the comments on this change were, we want to make some basic improvements to a lot of the lesser picked / lower win rate heroic abilities. Most of these are pretty simple changes to make them more enticing, like adding more damage, reducing cooldowns, or lowering mana costs. So, basically, a lot of heroics that aren't picked got changes, or the heroics that are picked against them are picked a lot more. So what we have now is a ton of changes to a bunch of them that say, see that comment. So we'll just kind of roll through these as quick as possible. Adithar, Evolved Monstrosity, maximum minion stacks increase from 30 to 40, and health increase from 931 to 1,000. The scaling is the same on the health per level. Same reasons. Everyone took the clone ultimate that I can't think of the name
Ultimate
of.
Evolution.
I still like Monstrosity. I liked it before. I still like it now. I like it even more.
Okay, hipster.
Okay. Jimmy, what do you think?
I still don't think this is going to make it a more appealing pick than Ultimate Evolution, really.
I'm going to go ahead and side with Jimmy here. I think the body that the clone provides is always going to be more substantial than the monster.
Say you have a high damage DPS on your team.
Right.
You're going to give up a second body of that for pushing out a lane?
Or if you only have one tank on your team and that one tank is Johanna, why not have the more appeals?
Yeah.
Okay, Brightwing, Emerald Wing. Now passively increases the Soothing Mist healing by 8%. Emerald Wind is a sort of a push-off damage talent that was never taken because Blink Heal was so important. What do you think, Jimmy?
I really like this, and I'm interested to play around with it. I mean, 8% seems like a small amount, but over the course of the game, that can really ramp up, I feel like. And obviously, if you're going to be the primary support, you're going to be putting talents into the Soothing Mist, so it's going to be more than 8%. Generally.
Willie, what do you think?
I don't know. I don't play healers.
Okay. I will say that I agree with Jimmy. I'll say the Brightwing changes are very relevant just simply because Soothing Mist goes off every 6 seconds. I played against a Brightwing earlier, and she more than doubled our... granted, the support on our team was hot garbage, but the healing was so significant from Brightwing, and they took Emerald Wind.
What was your support, like Michael Udall said, a dumpster?
It was a dumpster fire.
Oh, yeah.
Or jail sex by their Brightwing.
Oh, jeez. Going on the theme of changing heroics of the supports, Lily, Water Dragon, got its damage buffed significantly from 192 to 318. And the mana cost decreased from 100 to 50. So that's interesting.
Still garbage. Not. Always take
Still
jugs.
Garbage. If you don't take jugs, I'll punch you in the face.
Yeah. Do not take Water Dragon. If you're taking Water Dragon, make sure you are the off support.
Yeah.
Which was always the case for Water Dragon.
And that's going to be the same with this next one.
You're still not taking it.
No, if you're the off support, if you have a true support and you're going damage Lily, which is somewhat viable just because there's no way to interrupt her constant damage, it's possible. And this makes it even more possible with almost a double damage increase. But yeah, if you're the only healer on your team, Lily needs to take jugs all the time.
Yeah.
Malfurion, Jimmy, well in your wheelhouse. Go ahead and describe those.
Twilight Dream now passively increases Malfurion's mana regen by 1.5 mana per second. Oh, okay. I'm still.
Is that enough?
No, I'm not gonna take that over Tranquility, ever.
Okay. I agree with you. I mean, I don't play a lot of Malfurion because I feel like he's the worst healer in the game at this point.
He's so bad right now.
He's sustain heal in a meta that doesn't need sustain. When everyone else can burst heal or sustain heal at a much higher rate, he's just such garbage. The only thing to write home about with Malfurion right now is his root, and it's not enough to make him a viable support choice, in my opinion. And these changes change that. Tyrande, she got her Starfall damage increase, the cooldown reduction, and the mana reduction. I feel like this just brings Starfall back where it used to be. But the changes to Shadowstalk were so major that Shadowstalk is still the ultimate of choice. It's why she can solo support now. Yeah. I mean, this just makes it so, like, if you get a double support comp, like, I feel like these changes kind of, like, especially with Lily, Malfurion, and Tehran, are more for quick match, where if you go into a double support with a character who's more supporty than you, you have options.
Absolutely.
But if you're the sole support, these changes don't mean anything to you.
Mm-hmm.
Uther's Divine Storm being up from 1 point for the stun duration on his Divine Storm went up from 1.5 to 1.75 seconds. That's relevant.
I think this is more interesting than it sounds like, actually, especially with really Illidan kind of coming back into this. Divine Storm might be viable in certain situations now. Like
Divine Storm is always based on how many heroes you hit it with. Like. Mm-hmm. Versus the shield, it always depends on if your hero gets saved and if you stun 3 or more targets. Adding 0.25 seconds to that stun, especially on if you're a noob team who can burst down 2 heroes during that stun, or at least put them in a situation where they're almost dead. Those extra ticks off the control of the opponent's mobility, it could be a big deal.
Yeah, and this is half a second more stun now than sundering now. So I mean, that's a scary amount of time. I know half a second doesn't seem like a lot, but if you coordinate your ults like with that, say an Apocalypse or something like that, I mean, that's a lot of damage that's going to be coming out.
Coming from a support, that is a very long stun, basically, is the moral of that story.
Yeah.
No. Like, most assassins and tanks do not have stuns that last that long off of their ultimates. The fact that a support can do that, and especially someone like Uther who can actually get in there and trade and survive a little bit, it's always going to depend on the setup. It's always going to depend on comp versus comp. But I do feel like these changes lend more of a possibility for this ult to be picked more regularly, compared to like Tehran and Malfurion and Lily.
Definitely. And Zex, we're getting kind of into your territory now.
Here we go.
ETC stage dive damage increased from 201 to 330.
I mean, it's a great mobility ult, but I'm still taking Mosh Pit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Falling Sword. Or did you want to talk about?
I was complaining yesterday. I wanted to take Falling Sword, but now you're going to have a much harder time convincing me of not taking Falling Sword when I feel like I can take Falling Sword, Charlie.
I think Falling Sword's amazing. Just in what we played against Chair League last night, Falling Sword wasn't going to be as good because they had so much melee. They were going to be standing in a place we already wanted them to be. Mm-hmm. Now this Falling Sword doing that much damage to the backline against teams who try to position themselves in a 1-2-3 type of, or a 1-2-2 type of positioning, or a 1-1-3 positioning. Yeah, Falling Sword's even better now. Falling Sword will always punish Morales comps, and for it to do that much more damage, 100 more damage, well, not even that, 114 more damage base with still the same scaling. I mean,
it's a lot of damage. It's a ridiculous amount of damage for Falling Sword, and the mobility
up on top of it. Yeah,
and
yeah,
there's some things I gotta mess around.
It's one of those ults that's really underrated right now, and the fact that it does more damage, look out.
Did you want to talk about stage dive? It sounded like Charlie, you wanted to comment about that, or not really?
Oh no, I was just gonna say stage dive is still garbage. Like, until they change how good Mosh Pit is, stage dive will always be the second choice. There's no like going between that. Like, Mosh Pit is just way too good.
Yeah, and then
a good Mosh Pit can win you the game. Like a good stage dive at best will get you better positioning.
And the last one, Muradin's Haymaker damage dealt to secondary targets increased from 25% to 100% damage of Haymaker's primary target damage. Are you taking Playmaker now, Zex?
If we're running a double tank comp, maybe. Like, the dispositioning it provides is really strong. But again, if you're main tanking, like, Avatar is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, it's exactly that. There are like a lot of these changes feel like if you're the off version of what your role is supposed to be, if you're the off support or the off tank, these choices are a lot more viable now. But it's hard to compare them to the choice that is currently being taken amongst all these heroes. I'm glad they're trying to make these changes to make these lesser picked heroics because you have two choices. Those choices should be hard and they should depend on what you're facing and what map you're on and what role you're in. So the lesser taken choices in the extreme cases, like what's being presented here, I'm glad they're trying to make them better, but it's hard to go against what's working right now because they're not nerfing the other stuff except in the case of Thrall. Everyone else, they're just getting changes to the alts that suck. So it's cool to see them get a little better, and it's fun to talk about what they might be able to do in certain situations. But at the end of the day, the alts that are being taken on the other end of these picks are just superior in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's it for the balance patch. I give it a thumbs up. I am okay. I'm actually really okay with this coming out right before qualifiers, which are actually happening right now, I believe. Because they didn't come out in the middle of summer qualifiers or something silly like that. I mean, I know it was very, very short notice, but at least they're out before the tournament starts and not in the middle of it.
And I think a lot of this got pushed through because of the problems with Keltis and the Infinite Chain Bomb. We didn't really talk about that, but going into this week, everyone kind of discovered Keltis had a way to do Infinite Chain Bombs forever.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we actually did speak to Dustin Browder, and he confirmed for us during our interview at Heroes of the Dorm that Kael'thas was, in fact, banned for the event. That's why you didn't see him during any of the matches of Heroes of the Dorm this weekend. What did you want?
Jimmy's going to go ahead and kind of gloss over this, but BlizzPro got an interview with Dustin Browder, and Jimmy and our resident awesome contributor Alebeard took care of that and took point, and it was an amazing interview.
And Kitchen from BlizzPro as well. She did a great job with some of the other questions. Kind of the more broad questions. I don't want to read this thing to people because people can read it, but I mean... heroesofthestorm.blizzpro.com. Is there anything specifically you wanted to go over? Because there's a lot that we got to ask. It was interesting, actually. The PR person with us, Siobhan, she is freaking awesome, by the way. She leaned over to us about halfway through the interview. She's like, oh, we're letting all the press people go pick seats downstairs. Do you want to do that, or... have the full duration of the interview? I'm like, we'll take the full duration of the interview. Like, how often do you get to talk to Dustin Browder for half an hour? Right. I think I want to really quickly talk about the last question because it was so fairly personal to me, and it blew up on Reddit.
Let's just cover that tonight. Yeah.
I mean, so at the end of the interview, Siobhan was like, oh, you guys have like a minute left. And Dustin's like, oh, I'll just ramble on and on if you ask a question. So I'm like, okay. And I thought it was kind of a throwaway question. I was like, I'm a Lost Vikings player. I'm a little bit concerned about their win rate on Hotslog because they're like 55, 56%, I think, right now. And I know Blizzard has always been like, we want Heroes to be at as close to like 50% as possible. And he kind of mellowed out my concerns a bit. He was like, I don't think it's too high, and he says that he doesn't think they're going to nerf him because of how difficult they are to play. And then he went on a typical Dustin Browder rant and kind of just these were very, very theoretical, high level thinking. Nothing like this is not absolute or going into the game at all, but it was just something they were talking about how to change Vikings to be a little bit different, maybe a little bit easier to play, where like one of the talents being like, oh, you have it so that only one of the Vikings gets XP versus all three are able to split and get XP. So generally you have to keep them together, so there's no reason to be splitting in lanes with the other ones. And And that was pretty much it. And Reddit kind of got a little angry about that, because that also was kind of in line with the question I asked that Charlie had told me that we should be asking, and that was basically along the lines about balance concerns of changing heroes fairly frequently, that it almost punishes players that have to relearn that hero.
Yes.
And Browder immediately pointed to Brightwing, and he's like, I think Brightwing players are still mad at me. And they realize it's a concern, and they feel like they do have heroes that are pretty poorly designed, and that's something they recognize and they want to get to at some point in the future, just because they're like 3 years past their initial development process for some of these initial heroes, and so they've learned a lot more from there. So I mean, they want to be careful about how much they change stuff, but they do want to make things better. And basically he was like, I don't want to make people angry, but there is a cost to changing these heroes, and he's trying not to trivialize that cost in any way, because he said it himself, he's had it to him where heroes changes under him, and it's not a great feeling. So it's just something very interesting.
I absolutely loved his response. That was a question I personally had something like invested into. And it's nice to hear him say, like, Guy, we're doing this because we feel like there is legitimate changes throughout all aspects of the game where you need to relearn something. And we're not doing this lightly. We're doing it because it's for the betterment of the game down the line, which we have more knowledge of than you, frankly. And when he tells you, like, hey, the Vikings, we feel like, there's a high learning curve on them, and there's a high win percentage on them because there's a dedicated player base to that character. Like, all of these things let me know that the people who design this game have a very big trust in the people who are developing, like, the future of this game. And I feel completely satisfied by the answers he gave you. And that interview was just, it was really great for me to read. I felt so happy to finish that interview and feel like, wow, the future of Heroes just looks so great for me right now. And I'm really happy to know that the developers and the designers feel so strongly about the changes, and they have reasons for them and everything. Like, it's easy to get your hero nerfed and go, oh man, Blizzard hates me, blah, 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 blah. Like, when they're willing to step up and just kind of tell you why they're doing what they're doing, it feels really good.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other one kind of answer I want to highlight a bit was, we were talking about arena mode, and then he segued. Well, he was like, "Oh, there's no timeline on it. We're prioritizing season 1 and MMR changes before that." So, which I'm happy that they're focusing on that. But he talked about the Lost Caverns map, the new era map, and I guess a designer put it together in 1 week, and Browder was like, "There's no way you can put that together in 1 week to put it out for players," because they were seeing people like us playing Arims on stuff like Curse Hollow. We just all throw 5 random heroes into there and just mad rush through the middle of the map there. But yeah, it was just basically thrown together and added to the game, and Browder was like thinking too highly of it. He's like, "Oh, we got to add it. Are we adding it to the draft or the map rotation for quick match?" And he was like, no, it'd just be for custom games. So, I mean, that's kind of the story of how that came about, which is, I think, really cool, and just shows the flexibility of the Heroes team, that they're able to just put something together like that so quickly, that I feel is such a good asset to the community, because you don't always want to play quick match or hero league or team league. You want to kind of have some fun. Not that competitive isn't fun, but it's a different kind of fun.
Yeah. You're not always in the mood for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the reason why people play AI matches.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other stuff we talked about, so make sure you check that out. heroesofthestorm.blizspro.com, and maybe we answered something you're curious about.
Yeah, definitely. We have a quick Reddit comment. We're just going to go through what's hot on Reddit very quickly today because we're running long on time because of the patch notes. Basically, one of the hotter topics on Reddit was there's no reason for the camera to lock on your hero after hearthing if you're playing it on lock camera. And the poster basically admitted it's a trivial complaint. But to heroes like Brightwing, Abathur, Dahaka, Falstad, and Vikings, this matters a lot. Because a lot of the times when you're hearthing, you're not looking to go back to exactly where you were. Sometimes you want to keep sight on where you are. You're not looking to hearth back on where you're going. You're looking to keep sight on where you were. And in the cases of these heroes, that matters a lot. I can speak specifically towards Brightwing. When I'm hearthing, my goal most of the time is I'm hearthing to get mana on health and go right back to where I was. I would rather keep vision on where I'm going than be forced to look at my map where I have to go. So I really think the solution is a checkbox in the options here. Especially with the changes to the hotkeys recently, it would be very easy to do the same things. Specific sort of things where you can say, like, I don't want my map to be locked when I hearth with this hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I am, as a Vikings player, you see this a lot. If you try to hearth back just one, and it just puts the camera back to the Nexus, and you're like, I was just microing Blizzard. Come on. So yeah, this is just a really simple quality of life change that they really should do, and I forgot that it annoyed me so much because I've gotten just kind of used to it. So it'll be nice if it does get changed. Zex, any additional thoughts, or kind of along the same line?
It was just along the same line, like nothing too complicated. I mean, I agree entirely with the poster's point. I mean, you want to look where you were, not where you're going. You're going back. You want to be able to help provide that final bit of team vision for your team.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think we are going to start closing out the show. But before we go, we have the Asmodunk bundle to give away. And I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to do that. So for the next few minutes, go ahead and put in the word slam, and you'll be added to our giveaway for this. And we'll close out the show in just a few minutes and give that away. But it is going to be episode 56 of the Heroes Power Hour. And yeah, make sure to check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Heroes Power Hour. If you'd like to contribute to the Patreon, become a patron and be guaranteed a slot in our nightly games on Tuesday nights here after the show. And it helps. No exclamation point, guys. It's just the word slam. And we will, yeah, the Patreon just helps us with our costs with the show. There's a lot of other costs just associated with it. It's all lowercase, by the way. It didn't take it for UMWADSIT. So, all right, we will. Sorry, I keep getting distracted by this giveaway. Anyway, Zex, anything you want to say?
Don't fake the funk on a nasty dunk.
Sorry, I've returned.
I see that. Any closing thoughts before we give away our Asmodunk skin?
I'll say Heroes of the Storm this year, another rousing success. You're going to go with college athletics or college esports or whatever you want to call it. It's going to go in waves. And when the people who came so close to first last year win it this year, you can't really complain. There's going to be a gap of knowledge and talent. As far as the patch notes go, I'm so excited about these changes. I feel more inclined to play Heroes than I have in a long time. Like as far as just wanting to jump in and play, I think the changes in the last 2 weeks have done a lot for that. And yeah, that's all I got.
Definitely, and Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. They did sell this Astro Dunk T-shirt at Heroes of the Dorm, and I couldn't pass it up. It was the most ridiculous thing.
I don't blame you.
And
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and our winner, it is MWAD Sit, Wadsit, however you want to pronounce that. So I put up the display there so you can see how the roll happened, and I will message you with the code. It gives you the skin, it gives you the mount, and gives you the portrait, and gives you the hero if you don't have the hero yet. So look for that in your Twitch inbox very soon, coming from my Twitch account, DJ Tyrant. And unless you guys have any more closing thoughts, I think that's it for this week, episode 56 of the Heroes Power Hour. Stay tight.
Stay tight. Guys, stay tight out there.